Morning, all. All right, so quick, easy news of the day preview video today to get things started for everybody. Starting with Montreal at home against Tampa. Tonight's tonight, right? So 5 o'clock Eastern or 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern. I scared people on the East Coast for a second. Wait a minute, it's 2 o'clock. But 2 o'clock Pacific would be 5 o'clock. All right, 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific. I don't want to start throwing people off. So this is Montreal. I mean, it's too much to say it's a last gasp, but it kind of is. So if Montreal loses tonight, that'll do it. And for Montreal, they have two issues facing them. One, Tampa Bay's attack, their defense, both really solid, and two, their goaltending is fantastic as well. Tampa Bay doesn't really have a weakness, and I know people all want to throw the whole salary cap thing there, but the salary cap rules have been the same since 2005, and this isn't the first time that a team has been over the cap and managed to win. There are various ways to cheat the cap, and at some point in time, I will probably do a video on that. And yeah, so and again, saying cheat the cap, it's just that's the system that's there. And will other teams do it? Probably. With this flat cap, I would think there's other teams that are going to be tempted to figure out some way to make sure they can ice the best roster while the salary cap doesn't move up, and it was supposed to. Remember, before the pause and everything all went up into midair, the salary cap was supposed to go up. And it was supposed to go up last year. It was supposed to go up this year as well. And now that didn't happen. So there are going to be a lot of general managers who find themselves in a similar position as Tampa. Killorn is still out for Tampa. Joseph will still be in there. So that's a move that we'll see how that turns out tonight. But it was fine in the last game. So, yeah, Joseph gets a chance to prove himself. And Montreal has to figure out a way to solve Vasilevsky. .939 save percentage, 1.89 goals against average. Those numbers are elite. And Kucherov's 18 power play points, just power play points, would make him the third overall scorer in the playoffs. But you factor in his 5-on-5 points, he's easily first. And then you've got Hedman on the blue line. McDonough's leading the playoffs in plus minus. You can go on and on about all of this star-studded lineup that they've got there. Now, for Montreal, they do get Dominic Ducharme back. And, of course, the headline being the whole fact that they're not allowed to have more than the 3,500 in attendance. Hey, I agree. Quebec, I thought was going to allow at least the 50%. While everybody wants to say, oh, that's all of Canada's, like, no, that's on Quebec. That's their provincial thing. If it was in BC, it'd be half attendance. If it was in Alberta, it'd be near full. From the new rules that went into effect on July 1st. Yeah, Alberta would be almost full. They're having the Stampede, and BC, they've got the P&E open, which they didn't last summer. So with some caveats and some controls in place, but it's open. So yeah, for Montreal, I do think this is a missed opportunity for the province, and we'll see how it works out. I know the city's planning a 5,000 person viewing party. I've heard. I also saw it pluralized, so that means there's multiple viewing parties going on. But those can get kind of dicey. Coming from a Vancouver fan, those can get kind of dicey. So keep an eye on your viewing parties and on what your fans are doing or not doing. But, I hope that it's a great experience tonight for Montreal. And I would like to see the series somewhat competitive. If Tampa Bay wins Game 3, I don't even know if there's a point in me covering Game 4 because it's a fait accompli at that point, right? All right, Washington. The reason I'm wearing this jersey and hat. Nick Backstrom. So he had a great start to the season. His second half, his points totals definitely dropped off. And dealing with a hip injury. What's interesting is he had surgery 6 years ago. And it's just that old nagging injury. And this is one of those things when players get older, that injury that a guy gets surgery for and everything's fine, 1 year, a few years later, that pain can come back. You can have that injury end up coming back. I know when I started doing my treadmill 4 miles a day, and now I'm up to 5. There were old injuries I had back when I was a teenager where I'm like, wow, that's still there. So, yeah, I can imagine for elite level athletes, it's got to be rough. So, Backstrom, of course, looking forward to having an off season to rest up and be 100% next year, and I think a lot of players will. There was a shortened off season between the playoffs last year and the start of the season this year, and that squashed schedule as expected. I think it took a lot out of a lot of players. We get into a normal schedule next season. I think that that's going to help quite a bit, which I still think is part of the reason why the NHL isn't all that excited about going to the Olympics, because that takes 2 weeks out of your schedule minimum. And if there's quarantine going out and quarantine coming back, that may end up being 3 or 4 weeks. And that's the whole thing. The NHL doesn't really know how this is going to work, right? So you may have to shut down the league for a month, and that might be a non-starter. But yeah, so we'll see how all of that turns out. Because if you shut the league down for a month and then you're having an 82 game schedule, now you're playing a squash schedule again, and players are going to be mad at playing 3 games in 4 nights, multiple weeks in a season, because they have to make up for that huge part of the season being taken up by the Olympic break. But again, we'll see what happens. I wanted to clarify this too. So we're seeing trades happening, right? And people are like, well, the playoffs are on. Are they allowed? Yes. There is actually no trade freeze. Trade freezes are only at Christmas. And of course, during the pause, they had a freeze on rosters. Just your roster's frozen. You can't make any moves right now. The trade deadline is only for the playoffs. So if you make a trade after the trade deadline, the players you acquire cannot play on your playoff roster. So the trade deadline is just meant for playoffs. Now, the reason why we don't see a bunch of really big trades during the playoffs, well, as a general manager, you want to make sure you've got a maximum number of potential trading partners. So it's not in your best interest to start making trades during the first round, or even potentially during the second. But there is also kind of an agreement that you don't want to make a deal that's going to upstage the NHL playoffs. So if Edmonton came out tomorrow and said, we've traded McDavid, we're crazy, you'd have to do it in like a used car lot kind of announcement, because that's the only way that people would be like, oh, I guess they've lost their minds. All the inflatable tube men tell me that Edmonton's lost their minds. Now you want to see that with a trade announcement, right? But while they could do that, I think the NHL would frown on that. They'd be like, great, now nobody's talking about the Stanley Cup final, which right now people are really so focused on the expansion. I did that video last night. I thought, well, this is a good 4th video of the day. I'm sure I'll do this. And most viewed video I've done in a week. So I had no idea. But yeah, the trade deadline is only about the playoffs. There is no trade freeze. You can make trades after the deadline. Just it can't be it. So I mean, technically Ottawa and Detroit could have made a deal after the deadline was done. It wouldn't necessarily affected them. But the question being asked would have been, but why? You've only got a couple weeks or a few weeks left in the season. Doesn't make a real big difference. You might as well wait till the off season. So yeah, there you go. Trade deadline and all that. And all right. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. Let me know who you think wins the game tonight. And if you think it's Montreal, how? That's the question. I look at game 2 and I think, wow, they played really, really well and they lost. So that's got to be disheartening. Even though all players are saying all the right things, it has to be somewhat disheartening to, go out there and give it your best, and then look at the score at the end of the night and go, wow, we still didn't beat them. But how are they going to beat them tonight if you think they're going to beat them? Let me know in the comments section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.